Yeah.
I loved how that started recording. Anyway, hello everyone. Welcome to this episode of Who Doesn't Have a Podcast. My name is Jerome. Normally I'd say hi Jerome, and I'll say it again for you. Hi Jerome. And with me is a stalwart of the Doctor Who fan base, the Doctor Who environment. It's Mr. Michael Priestley. Here he is.
Hi, Jerome. Did you do that because you forgot the name of the podcast?
Yeah. But can you tell it's my first time, everyone? But I would like to say that I have turned up, I've committed, because I'm actually wearing the TARDIS.
Yeah, I was thinking this. That's a really good. Oh my god, yeah, I didn't notice that because I was thinking because I didn't. I kind of want like Doctor Who memorabilia in the background, but I don't actually own anything. Like everything that I have, like Doctor Who related, is at my parents' house. Yeah, do you know I have that? Do you remember the season 1 box set in the shape of the TARDIS?
I do.
You have that?
Very well.
Yeah. Do you have it?
Yeah, not anymore. I don't know why not anymore. We did have it. I think it might have been
Well, it
sold.
dematerialized.
Yeah, that's what happened. Ignore what I said. That's what happened. Can you imagine? We've just started a Doctor Who podcast, and you don't have any memorabilia on you, and I sold the very first DVD of Series 1. This is whoa.
Well,
we're off to it.
I've got my parents bought me like an apron, a cooking apron, which is like it's Dalek cooking apron. Oh, moving on.
Actually, no. That's a good way to start. What is the weirdest bit of Doctor Who merchandising you've ever bought or have been bought? And is it allowed to be said before the watershed that is 9 o'clock?
I had egg cups. Maybe it's not that weird. I had egg cups. Yeah, that's not that weird. I had egg cups.
Egg cups. I mean, were they like just TARDIS coloured egg cups, or were they like actual Dalek ones?
Pretty sure they had. Yeah, they had Daleks on them. Pretty sure they had Daleks on them.
That's strong. I don't think I have a weird piece of merchandising. I have a very quick weird story, which is I actually had a replica of Matt Smith's sonic screwdriver. So the first, because I think he had two, or he had like a custom one on the original one. But the original one I had a replica of. And I went to a fancy dress party one night with my ex, and we went as Matt Smith's Doctor and Amy when she's in her very first costume in the police kissogram. And then the following night, it was her prom, and I was wearing the same blazer that I had been wearing at the Doctor Who fancy dress party. And there was a bouncer on the door, and he searched me, and he found this sonic screwdriver in my inside pocket. And he genuinely looked at me and was like, "What is this?" Like with absolute steel in his eyes and thunder in his voice. And I think a sort of 17-year-old kind of, even prepubescent at this point, was kind of like,
you went,
I might as well have at that point. But all I can remember is just this gaggle of girls that were all my ex's friends at the points, just cacking themselves. And I've never been so embarrassed in all my life, which is now a great story to tell over the podcast. So anyway, the Giggle.
A podcast specifically about Doctor Who. That, and I say this with love, is the nerdiest thing I've ever heard in my life. I've never cosplayed, although I'd love to go to like a Comic Con or something. Before we get into the Giggle, actually, have you seen what Christopher Eccleston, a bit of news, see what Christopher Eccleston said recently about, I sent you the video, didn't I?
You did, yeah. That. Who hasn't seen it, actually, to be fair? Because I think like it was all over, even before you sent it, it was like all over YouTube, and they were like, Chris Eccleston is just,
I keep seeing it.
He's just gone, he's gone from 0 to 100 in about the space of 2 seconds. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I know we're talking about the Giggle mainly today, but you've got to mention it because it's so recent. Like, it's never really been announced why there's such animosity. Do you know what I mean? Around Christopher Eccleston and his tenure and what happened
over the years.
There's been little kind of things that have dropped out. Do you know what I mean? And kind of given hints and clues. But to be fair, he's never really said anything. The production team have never really said anything. They kind of sort of, I don't know, like battened up the hatch and just went, we're going to agree to disagree, and we're just going to call it a day, and that, you know, it's like it's not going to work, sort of thing. But it seems now kind of, you know, 2005, we're now in 2023. It's nearly been 20 years, and this just felt like a seemingly more potent reaction, like the first, where it's been like, oh no, you're actually naming names, and you're actually like giving a direct approach. Do you think there's any particular reason for that, or do you think it was just like he was at a Comic-Con event, he got asked a question, it was like in the moment, like?
He's name dropped Russel T Davies before as being one of the reasons. He's definitely done some interviews in the past in which he said that his relationship with like the big wigs, like in charge of the show, was shut down. I found that clip really interesting actually, because he says that, and then he also says that there were people at the BBC that wouldn't touch Doctor Who with a barge pole that first series because they thought it was going to be a failure. And he says, they thought it was going to be Eccleston's folly, Piper's folly, Russell T Davies's folly, which to me, that's so weird because it's almost like he's also then kind of sticking up for Russell T Davies at the same time. But yeah, he blames Russell T Davies, Julie Gardner, and there's somebody else who's now in charge of like Bad Wolf, Jane Tranter. He blames them as being like the top three, like his relationship with them broke down. And I remember saying to you, a bit of inside baseball for any potential listeners, pre it happening, and we were pre the 60th anniversary, we were discussing, you know, back then when we were young, dumb, and full of, I won't say it, but we were thinking about who, you know, if there are going to be any cameos, who's it going to be? And I was like, you know, Russell T Davies coming back, it'd be so symbolic if Christopher Eccleston came back as well. And the way I rationalized it in my own head was, oh, well, it's been, you know, how long? 15 years? Like, Russell T Davies has grown as a showrunner. He's grown as a writer. Like, I'm sure that the production is so much more well run these days than what it was. And they've both like kind of grown. I thought there would have been like a handshake behind the scenes, but yeah, I mean, obviously it's still fresh as anything.
I get the impression that I think that bridge may have well and truly been burned. And I think as well, looking at where the show's going, and I'll save that just for the moment because that's obviously what we're going to talk about in a second. But looking at where it's going, I actually think while it opens up the possibilities for many cameos, it also limits them. And I think I'll explain why in a minute, because I think it's the direction is so new. It's really interesting where they've gone. But just quickly, before we get onto that, I'd just like to get the thoughts of Dan.
All right, Dan.
Oh, yeah, of course. For all our listeners or people watching this particular podcast, you'll notice Dan isn't here. And that's because he hasn't watched the latest special of Doctor Who. Yeah. He also told me over the phone
in confidence.
He hates Doctor Who. He's never enjoyed it, and he was just here for the money. But anyway, the giggle. Yeah.
I'd like to add, actually, sorry, because I was obviously privy to these conversations as well, is Dan did say, because obviously we're a fresh podcast, we don't really have any listeners at the moment, but anybody that does potentially start listening, he said he fucking hates you. Yeah, okay, let's start.
Yeah. So the giggle, Mike. Well, just very basically, was it a 10 out of 10 episode for you, or was it something? What were your overriding feelings? Love, hate, ambivalence? What are you saying?
I've seen it twice, and I enjoyed it on an equal measure both times. I think for me, it is a 9 out of 10. It's probably my favorite out of the three specials. Yeah, it's not a 10 out of 10. It's a 9 out of 10 for me, I think. What about you?
I really enjoyed it. I think that I've seen some interesting kind of reviews, and I've talked to some people who've seen the episode as well. And it's interesting because I think depending on the angle you look at it, it's got a lot of different reviews. I think if you look at it as a Doctor episode, it's a real celebration. There's a lot of new things that are brought to the table, a lot of things that I enjoyed, a lot of like mini Easter eggs in there. If you go back and watch a second or third time, I think you pick them up. But from the angle, someone said something really interesting, which was the angle. Someone I know quite well felt that they wasted the toy maker, which I thought was really interesting. And because I actually thought Neil Patrick Harris was one of the strongest parts of the episode. I thought he was really good in the parts that he was in. But it was interesting because I suppose you know, like the theory of him being this celestial antagonist, immortal, can't die, can't really be defeated. The only way, like, and to be fair, they emphasize that in the episode where it's like the game, the rules of the game. Like this is the function of how you exist. I thought was really interesting, but it did feel like, I don't know how much I enjoyed that whole throwing the ball thing. It did feel a really weird end to, do you know what I mean? Like that antagonist. I do get it was trying to shine a light on, we have a new doctor. We have a new doctor and we have a second doctor. And I get that was meant to be kind of the crux of the moment, but it did feel a bit weird that he sort of just dropped it and was like, oh, you lost. But, you know, I think
Yeah, because I was thinking he's the celestial toy maker. Like, surely he could just dive off, catch the ball, and then
you
I don't
think he'd
know,
know
like,
how to catch a ball.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I don't know, do something amazing with the atoms around him and just find himself back on the landing of Unit HQ. What I would say is, I felt this across the 3 specials, is they're all big. This is actually something about Doctor Who episodes in general. They are movie ideas. The amount of ideas they pack into each episode of Doctor Who warrants film. And I think especially when you market something as specials, I think they all could have benefited from being longer. I think 90 minutes for each special would have been great. And actually, I think this was the special that could have felt that the most, that extra runtime the most. Because yes, you could have had more toy maker stuff. You could have had more 14th Doctor and Donna stuff, to be honest. You could have, there's loads of, yeah. But as the episode is, yeah, it's still a 9 out of 10 for me, I think.
Do you think that might have been the case, but stuff got cut? Or do you think that these were always kind of like the fully fledged? Because I thought it was interesting, because obviously like everyone's been going spoiler crazy and kind of rumor mill and all of this with like who's going to appear and what's going to happen, and some things were right inevitably and some things weren't. I think it was great to see Bonnie Tyler in Bonnie Langford in the final special.
You just got some emails, mate. People are going to be furious they said reduce the emails.
Did you not see that bit where David Tennant was just like turn around and there she was with a microphone up there with the toy maker? Yeah, no, sorry, Bonnie Langford in the 3rd special, and because obviously we know she's going to be in Ncuti's first season because there's been pictures of her and him on the motorbike. So I thought there was some like really interesting kind of moves there, and I think I appreciated the fact that all of the episodes actually were more singular, because it would have been very easy being an anniversary to make everything conjoined and everything kind of overarching. But the fact it kind of went back for me to what made David and Catherine's 4th series so successful was just that every episode in itself was almost kind of like its own episode, and they could all be taken that way. I know there was the whole Davros thing kind of in the background, and it was kind of there from the beginning, a bit like John Smith and the Master. Like it was there from the background, but it never felt intimidating the whole way. Whereas sometimes I think maybe in the Moffat series, that kind of, it was a bit more like this is the big arc and you need to be aware of this all the time. And there's something else called the Timeless Child, but like but do you know what I mean? I think it was I liked I liked the idea that it was 3 episodes, like these were 3 standalone episodes, and I think like every character got their moment to shine. Like to be honest, I'm still impressed that they made Beep the Meep like work. Because when I heard that was going to be the case, I was so like, this could be like an Absorbaloff. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, but I thought they did really well. They made it work really well. And the non-things.
I actually, in contrast to you, I prefer my Doctor Who to be different. I prefer it to be a bit more serialized, to be honest. Russel T Davies described this as a mini season. And when he said that, I thought, oh, okay, these are going to be more standalone than I thought they were going to be. Because it was the 60th anniversary, I did expect some sort of 3-episode serialized event. And I think just from my own personal preference, and there will be so many valid reasons against this, that's what I prefer in terms of my Doctor Who and my story. Like, I love Flux, or the idea of Flux. Like, I love the idea of having that one story. But, I mean, I get it. I do. I just, yeah. I also think with serialization is what you can do is you can get a small group of characters and then you can really flesh them out over more screen time. So say if the toy maker was in that first episode antagonizing, you would have like we would have just got to know the toy maker a bit more.
Are you willing to admit now that the toy maker might not have been the boss?
In the first episode of this podcast, I laughed my ass off at that. But yeah, no, you're totally right. Like, I think, do you know who I think the boss is now, actually? And don't cream your pants. It's not the Valiant. I think the big boss is, they've announced Jinx Monsoon as like a villain. And I think Russel T Davies said in an Instagram post that she's the most powerful adversary the Doctor's ever come across, which a month prior he did for Neil Patrick Harris as well. So I think Jinx Monsoon's character is, hold on, or is Jinx Monsoon the, have I just got myself in a lot of trouble? Is Jinx Monsoon's the character, right? Or is that the name of the artist playing character?
I believe Jinx Monsoon is the character.
Okay.
Yeah.
The character, Jinx Monsoon.
This is where we're going to realise we have to put captions in this video at the bottom that say, as of the 21st of December 2023, this is what we mean. But no, I'm pretty sure it's the character.
Jinx Monsoon is going to be one of the legions that the toy maker's talking about at the end of this episode, as in my legions are coming. And I think the talent of that particular actor who's playing Jinx Monsoon is musical theatre. So I think Jinx Monsoon is going to be like the toy maker of music, right? I think they're going to go for like a full-on like music episode and whatever. So yeah, I don't know.
It's interesting because obviously like they've released, although it be leaked, the Goblin song from the Christmas special, which has got a very heavy musical theme in, and actually sounds pretty good. I can't lie, it actually does sound quite good. And it'd be interesting because there was a lot of, again, like hidden Easter eggs, hidden things, that bit with the toy maker where he was saying there's one being like I completely fear, but that's another story, like I wouldn't dare play a game with them.
One who waits.
And David's like, who's that? And it's like, oh, you don't need to know about that. And it's like
Someone
thanks, Russell. And then, but then also because I thought at first the whole thing about the master being in the tooth was a lie. I just thought that was something to kind of put more trauma and more guilt, like what happened to the master, because the Doctor and the master, for all their battles, for all their differences, like you can tell the Doctor deeply cares about the master. So like I think that was more like a tortured guilt thing. But then to see the tooth actually referenced at the end and taken by this mysterious glove, that made me think, oh, was that actually genuine then? Is that the master? Is there going to be... And it wouldn't be the first time the master has been resurrected from a small object.
And by somebody with red nails picking up an object that belongs to the man. Honestly, it's such a good, I think, deliberate callback to is it the Sound of Drum or that finale. I think it's did you catch that actually? Did you catch what they said about what Russel T Davies said in the commentary about how he's kind of in that scene, that brilliant scene where they're playing cut, they're cutting the cards between David Tennant and the toy maker. Did you catch that the toy maker says that he's made a jigsaw of the Doctor's past? Did you catch that bit?
I don't think I did at the time, but there was a lot of like as soon as the episode had come out and afterwards there were references which I have since seen
online.
Yeah,
and Russel T Davies said in the commentary for it that was his way of taking the Doctor's convoluted past, including everything that happened with the Timeless Child, and being like, believe what you want to believe. Like the toy maker, his thing is that the toy maker has meddled with the Doctor's past to some degree, so he's kind of opened up the canon, which I thought was really, really interesting.
I think it's kind of like, so
I think obviously, like, we'll have a little bit of a chat about bi-generation. It's never happened before. I thought it was done really well. I really enjoyed it. It was I was watching it with a friend, and just before it happened, we were kind of going, "What's going on here? Like, it's all faked." And I was like, "Oh wow!" I was like, "He's gonna split." I just clocked what was about to happen before it happened, and when it happened, it was still so shocking, but in like a nice way. But it was like, I'm actually watching something. This has never happened before. And it's like, this has changed the law, but I think it just felt the way it had been building up. And I think like it really hit home. I think the best moment for me out of the 3 specials, and it was because they were going for that. And there had been all this build up about, why have you come back as the 10th Doctor, or why have you got the same appearance, the same Doctor, and all of this, and is it a toy maker trick, is it the Valiard, is it, do you know what I mean, what's going on here, the split time?
Nobody thought it was the Valiard, Jerome.
I thought it was the Valiard. Anyway, sorry, I got something in my throat there. The point is, it was just when Catherine Tate's line, when Donna's line, when she was just like, maybe you wanted to come home, and I think everything that had been done in the previous 3 specials had just like built that moment up perfectly. And it wouldn't surprise me as well if that was one of the first lines that was written, where it was like, gonna have this thing, like, this face is gonna come back, and it's like, and the reason it's gonna come back is because it's exhausted and it's looking to stop. It's looking to think. And I think, and it wouldn't have surprised me if they then built the rest of the 3 specials around that idea. It just felt like that was the origin.
It's very Russel T Davies to make the solution to that problem, which is, why did this face come back? Something that isn't this grand, impossible sci-fi reason, just something that is actually a bit more relatable. You know, because it's so easy to get carried away and to be like, this is the toy maker's fault, isn't it? But actually, it wasn't. You know, it's just the Doctor. So let's talk about bi. Obviously, we're skipping a few steps, but let's talk about bi-generation. I am quite annoyed at myself, and this is quite ironic because now we're doing this Doctor Who podcast, and we're going to continue to do this Doctor Who podcast. I'd read the spoiler about this, so this fully leaked, and I think there was actually an article by the Independent that talked about it as well, and how they were going to change Doctor Who lore by doing this. And whether you believe the leaks or not, what leaks unfortunately do, and what I really, going forward in Doctor Who especially, I really, really want to try avoiding leaks, which is going to be hard when we do this podcast. But leaks and rumors, because it's kind of spoilt it for me a little bit, because even though I didn't necessarily believe the leak, it sits there in your head. So when it actually happens, it has less of a shock value to it. So when I watched it the first time, I was like, oh, I wish I didn't read that. I wish I didn't expect this to happen, because it's so well done when he starts regenerating and stops regenerating. And then, you think, oh, this has happened to David Tennant's Doctor before with the hand, like he's had a false regeneration before, and then they pull him. It's really, really well done. And I just wish I didn't see it coming. I did, unfortunately. It's so annoying.
I think it's interesting because how do you avoid leaks? Do you know, it's so like everything is like, because it's so difficult. But like, so because we'd been texting, I went full blackout. So I literally had a full day work at the gallery, and I was working a bar shift from like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I literally, from that moment, just put my phone on airplane mode. And it was difficult. Obviously, like, there were points I had to text people, like, just back and stuff. But I was so religious about avoiding Instagram, avoiding like YouTube, avoiding anything where I could refresh the page and the first thing that would come up, do you know what I mean, would be something Doctor Who related. I was really religious by it. And while it was a bit annoying, because you do have to like dictate your life around, do you know what I mean, like that spoiler aspect, it's interesting what you're saying, because it made that moment so good for me. Because even though I guessed it was coming, I didn't know it. I hadn't read about it. I hadn't been, do you know what I mean? Like I didn't have it in the back of my mind. It was only at the point where he stops regenerating and you see in his face, and I was like, I think he's going to split. But it was a pure like instinct reaction, and I loved it because of that. But I think, yeah, it is right. It's so difficult though, isn't it? Because as much as you want to avoid spoilers, it's normal to love spoilers. Do you know what I mean? Or just to
I
be
love
like,
them. I
to just
absolutely
be
love
like,
them.
what is it? Because also, like, if it wasn't for spoilers and stuff, why would we be doing a podcast? We want to talk about these things. We want to make hypotheses about what's going to happen, and do you know what I mean? Like any people returning and stuff, like, because you do. That's half the fun of it. So I think it is difficult because there's part of you
But
that
then
wants to know. But as
I
soon as the game gets
also
given away, it's really hard.
I also love that feeling of being surprised. And I was reading, David, when Jodie Whittaker regenerated into David Tennant, I read that it was voted like the top TV moment for, people in like TV magazine or whatever, because it was such a shock. And I thought, well, I'm so immersed in the world of Doctor Who, there's no way that could have been a shock because I follow everybody on Instagram. Do you know, like all of these things, like it was announced that they were coming back. So it wasn't really a shock at all. I'd love to be that audience member that's just like a casual person that isn't immersed in it. Their social medias aren't just like absolutely like indoctrinated in Doctor Who. So you could watch a moment like that and just be genuinely shocked by it. I'd absolutely love it. But what I did do... Sorry, go on.
No, go on. No, you finish because I was going to take it somewhere slightly else. So you finish what you were going to say.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say what it did do is it did the whole concept of by generation made it a multi-Doctor special, which I think from a storytelling perspective was a really clever thing to do.
Yeah, I totally think that's right as well, and I think it does. It completely opens up the lore. Like, I like the fact, like, I know, like, the Timeless Child isn't saying this sits well with me, but I like the fact, and I genuinely mean this, that Russell didn't ignore it, because it would have been very easy to do, as they've done with loads of stuff in Doctor Who over the decades. It's gone, this is not a good idea, so let's just never talk about it again and put it to the side of the box. But he, like, from the start was like, no, I'm going to work with it. I'm going to run with it. I'm going to try and do it into something. And because of how good a showrunner he is, I have faith that he will be able to make something interesting out of it. The thing that annoys me about The Timeless Child, and I've said this before in the podcast, but I think you know this behind all the jokes and stuff, it's not the idea. It's genuinely, it's not the idea. It's the execution of the idea that really annoyed me. Like, really annoyed me at the time.
Well,
but I feel like if it's an idea that can be taken forth and like made interesting, because at the core of it, it still has this interesting idea where it's like the main Time Lord who you've been following since 1963 turns out is not a Time Lord, which means it's a perfect encapsulation of Doctor Who. Like, it brings it back to that core thing, and that's amazing. It's just everything. I just feel like it was a lot. It was trying to like do a lot without kind of giving. It's that thing, isn't it, of like more questions than answers. But I feel like it was good. It's good that he didn't ignore it. It's good that he's taken it on and gone, no,
yeah.
we're gonna,
and I didn't think he would do, because that would be an absolutely audacious move to just ignore it. And I don't think he will do going forward, to be honest, because we know that Ruby Sunday is an orphan, for example, and so
that's it. But that's it. I think that's the genius crux where he's gone, look, this is a very big idea, very, very big idea. So let's do something that's relatable. A little bit like the Doctor needed to come home because he's exhausted. He's worn out. It's traumatized, that he needed to almost just separate, or they needed to almost just separate. And I feel like in a way it makes sense that Ncuti's series, and I want to talk about Ncuti in a minute because I think it's important we do, but like series 1, it's going back to series 1, because I don't think now it makes sense. It's not discrediting what's gone before, but it kind of just is a clean slate to go, that Doctor, it's like has retired, or like the Time War Doctor. Do you know what I mean? Like the Doctor who's just been, who is war torn and war ridden. Like, this is a Doctor that can go back to being like time and space. Do you know what I mean? Adventures in time and space, kind of like taking the memories with them, but not necessarily the feeling.
Did you notice?
I like that idea. I do like that.
Because what they did, I think this special was designed to be a bookend to New Who. Definitely New Who, and kind of a bit of classic Who as well. And but I think it's for New Who, because did you notice that when he's regenerating, there's a specific moment where Mel says to him, "You're going to be fantastic," which was Christopher Eccleston's Ninth Doctor's catchphrase, and they played the Ninth Doctor theme. Did you pick up on that?
I didn't at the time, but that's really just
it's amazing, and I haven't heard it in so long, and I was like, it just struck a memory with me where I was like, I recognise that music. It's definitely the Ninth Doctor's theme, and they definitely chose the word fantastic on purpose, and I think they did that because it is a bookend to New Who, like you just said. You've got this time war traumatized Doctor, and that has been carried over now for all this time, and now they're rebranding as season 1 again with Ncuti, and it's all going to be brand new. So yeah, I think this episode was specifically designed to be like, New Who is over, now we're on to the next version of Doctor Who, which I think is going to be amazing.
And it's also it's like, what an amazing series to have, where it's just like, it's been running since 1963. There's going to be problems, do you know what I mean, in terms of like getting every aspect of the lore. But it just constantly reinvents itself, and it's why it's just so successful, isn't it? It just constantly is not afraid to go, we're just gonna rewrite the rule book, and like, fair play. But going on to
release a Christmas single with some goblins singing, like, it's so,
do you know what I mean?
When I saw that, I was like, this is like nothing I've seen before. Yeah, I know. I was like, this is like nothing I've seen before. I would have never been able to predict this, but it's so Doctor Who. Like, it's so...
Because he's also said he sees Doctor Who now as more as a fantasy show, which has been interesting. He was like, it's going to annoy some of the hardcore sci-fi fans. But, like, I'm not... like, give it a chance. Do you know what I mean? Let's see what happens with it. And I feel like if someone's built up enough credit in the bank to make these changes, it's probably Russell. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like in the hands of anyone else, like, and he'll know ultimately, like, Ncuti, honestly, I get very, very good vibes straight away. I think
You've met him, haven't you? You've met him, didn't you act with him?
Yeah, I thought this is... So I was thinking just before this, I was like, were you not in that production?
No, I wasn't in it, no.
This goes back to that thing we were talking about before the podcast and having memories. But honestly, for some reason, I thought you were in the production. But anyway, very quickly, we did a Romeo and Juliet in Manchester in 2015, I want to say, before the widely acclaimed Brutopia. And we, just for the listeners there, me and Mike were in a production by a director or a writer called Howard Barker called Brutopia. Go and look it up. Apparently, it was a world premiere. It was a world premiere in the UK, apparently. Anyway, but Ncuti played Mercutio in that production. And he was amazing. Like, he was lovely. Like, and I didn't get to obviously see him that much because I was only in the ensemble. He was like one of the main cast. But when he was in like the dressing room and stuff, and when we had scenes with him, he was amazing. Like, genuinely, you kind of knew he was going to be big. And this was before Sex Education, where he was like, oh, you're a name now. But like, he was a great, he was very ethereal. He was very kind of like, a bit like his Doctor, energy, constant energy, physical energy. There was one time where I was meant to be fighting Johnny in our year. This is someone else for the listeners who was in our year. And he was ill for that particular day. So I got put up against Ncuti, who'd had like 2 minutes rehearsal. And we had this did you come and see it? I can't remember. It doesn't matter. But we had a hydraulic bridge where basically the idea was we had to swing each other around for choreography. And Ncuti just grabbed me and like threw me across this bridge. And I didn't even do anything. I was just there for the ride. And I was like, this guy is strong. He's powerful. He's energetic. And I feel like he's going to be a breath of fresh air. I think he's going to be really good. And from the footage I've seen so far, in what they've released of like the episode and him in the trailer and stuff, I think he's going to be great. I think he's going to be really good. And also, like, not the elephant in the room, the first male Black Doctor, who's kind of, I don't want to say mainstream canon, because obviously the fugitive Doctor, like, that counts within the canon, but in terms of like, how would you describe? I don't know, because she is like a mainstream Doctor.
This is your flagship Doctor who's leading the series.
Yeah, that has been like formally announced and stuff as well, I guess, is what I mean. But I think it's going to be, it's going to be good, and he's already filming his second season, so it's obviously
they're planning a third and a fourth.
He's already gone further. He's already gone further than Chris Eccleston.
Let's hope he doesn't have a falling out with the bigwigs. Sorry, my camera's gone.
You just get so excited there.
Very
Mike's gone into the time
podcast.
vortex. But yeah, what do you think? I've said a lot there. Well, how about you? Are you excited for new tenure?
I'm really, really excited. Before I talk about Ncuti Gatwa, I did just want to talk about a bit more about bi-generation and what they're going to do with David Tennant, because I think the plan. So the way that I understand bi-generation now, watched the episode, consumed all the other media like Doctor Who Unleashed and the commentary that they did, is bi-generation has effectively created split timelines for each Doctor where they didn't regenerate in the end. And I know that I said this in a voice note to you, but essentially it explains the curator. And the curator is actually the fourth Doctor, older. He's the fourth Doctor in his mid-80s, or however old Tom Baker was when he was, when he was filming that. And I quite like that idea. And I also think what it does is it now gives you opportunity for the Doctor to be in all the spin-offs that we know are coming, not all of them, but to make surprise appearances in spin-offs and it not be Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor. So you know how we've had spin-offs in the past where we've had, Peter Capaldi's in Class. The Doctor has always appeared one way or another in the spin-off, not Torchwood, but the TARDIS, the noise of the TARDIS appears in Torchwood. I think what it does now with the spin-offs that they are definitely going to do is you can have surprise appearances from past Doctors, and I think that is a genius move. Can you imagine watching a spin-off of Doctor Who and Matt Smith pops up in like episode 3 as the Doctor? You'd be like, that is amazing.
If you were to put money on a spin-off that's coming, what would you say is in the works? Because I know what I think, but I want to get your answer first. I know what I think, and I know what I'd want.
I think that the obvious one is Unit, isn't it? Because they've got the big Unit HQ and they've got all this. However, I know about a spin-off. I think I know about a spin-off that's happening because it was reported that there's a spin-off about the Sea Devils called The War Between the Land and the Sea, I believe. I believe that is happening. And Russel T Davies hinted at a spin-off with The War Between the Land and with an 8-word title. Is that 8 words? Have I embarrassed myself?
I thought you were going into some beautiful kind of poem there. It sounded like you were going into like a musical realm.
You were like, oh God, he's got lost in his head again.
You know what I'd love to see? I don't know whether we will, because again, I feel like there's going to. Sorry, I'm just watching.
It's 8 words. It's 8 words.
So it's interesting because it's that balance now, isn't it? You can open this world, you can do as many series as you want, but also you don't want to take away from Ncuti. Because I have also seen that I have seen some people who've like reviewed the Giggle and just hated it, not because it happened, but because it just felt like it just took emphasis off Ncuti and were kind of like, oh, David, we love David. And while I don't agree with that necessarily, I can understand probably where that point of view comes from. And obviously, like, you don't want it to be like, this is the flagship Doctor, but also loads of Doctors everywhere, and it's like gets away. But I think, we won't know how that kind of reacts until it happens, sort of thing. But if I would love to, the one thing I would love to see, and I don't know if it will happen, and I don't know how they do it. I don't know whether they do it as a kind of prequel. I don't know if they do it as like a running thing alongside. I would love to see Paul McGann given a full series. I would love to see him given a chance to do his Doctor, because I'm imagining how he's late 50s, early 60s, but he looks like someone who is still relatively fit, still relatively capable of maybe doing, a serial sort of series thing. Even if it wasn't a Doctor Who series, even if it was, I don't know, like you said, Unit, and like it turns out the 8th Doctor was the go-to guy. I don't know, do you know what I mean? Or something like that. But I would love to see Paul McGann just given the chance to show what would have been.
No, I thought about this the other day, and I thought that they can just, now they've got all this, they're building the Whoniverse properly, and they are distributed through Disney Plus worldwide. All these opportunities give rise to so many spin-offs, and why not have spin-offs of different incarnations of the Doctor? And I think the criticism of that, which you just stated, I understand it. I do understand it. But I think it's just one of those things where it's just because it hasn't happened yet. And as soon as it happens, as soon as you give Paul McGann a full mini series, that runs adjacent to the main Doctor Who, and it works, suddenly everyone's like, that's a fantastic idea. They've just got to make it good, and they've just got to make it work. I think that criticism held more weight when Doctor Who was, when it was just confined to its one series per year. But now we live in an age of streaming where there's multiple possibilities. And honestly, I think you could have a 11th Doctor spin-off. You could have a Paul McGann Doctor spin-off. You could have, I imagine they will do this, a Joe Martin Fugitive Doctor spin-off. I think why not? People will watch it, and it doesn't take away from Ncuti Gatwa, who will be brilliantly leading the flagship series, the current flagship series, you know. And think about all the crazy possibilities you could have there. You could have multi-Doctor episodes where Ncuti Gatwa is in these spin-offs, you know. I think
are we all just here? Are we all just here waiting inevitably for the 100th anniversary where it's going to be an Avengers style? They all come through a portal at once, and it's every Doctor you've ever known. Is that what we're all just waiting for?
And we'll I feel like it. I feel like it never. It in virtual reality. It'll be like you look everywhere, and it's just the Doctors.
We'll all be watching it from our care homes, and just been like, "I was there, I saw it." Honestly, I honestly, I think there's more good than bad. Definitely, I think there's way more good than there is bad. And I think that, it's an exciting time, and also as well, like, I think it's honouring all sorts of stuff. I feel like when they did that brief cameo of Ncuti appearing in the An Adventure in Space and Time with William Hartnell,
yeah, that was amazing,
and you know, and it's just a callback because I don't think anyone will forget. If it wasn't for William Hartnell, we wouldn't be here. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think anyone will forget that. Like, apparently he was a cantankerous old man who apparently wasn't like the first choice at first, or wasn't like a family actor. Do you know what I mean? He hadn't done this show before, and became beloved by like families and children all over the world. And then they were really upset that he was ill, and didn't want to end the show, which they thought they had to do. And then someone came up with the genius idea of him becoming Patrick Troughton, and it's just followed on. And I feel like that will always be honoured, because I think I've seen a lot of like responses whereby people have gone, "This is so disrespectful to William Hartnell." Do you know what I mean? In terms of and all of this, and I've seen that on a few things, and I just go, no, actually, like, I think if anything, it honours him. Do you know what I mean? That
people are furious until they're not. Honestly, as soon as it works, you have to keep this show moving forward. And having it move forward in this kind of Marvel style, multiple projects at once, I think it's just the way to do it. And I just briefly want to say about, obviously we probably need to wrap up soon as well, but Ncuti Gatwa, I think, you know, owing to the amount of screen time he got in this episode, which is probably the most screen time for any new Doctor introduced in their technical first episode, because it's usually reserved for the regeneration at the end.
Yeah.
What did he get? Like a good 20 minutes? 20 minutes or maybe a bit less of him sparring with David Tennant. I thought that he was the most confident. I've never been so convinced about a Doctor from their first appearance than I am about this one. I think Ncuti Gatwa was, the way that he was so different to David Tennant's Doctor, and so I just thought, wow, this guy is like, this is it, like, this is the future of Doctor Who. I thought it was amazing. I can't wait to watch his first full series.
Yeah, and also as well, just from a performance perspective, he nailed it, because not only are you coming in as a new Doctor, there's a lot of judgment, right? Because there is, everyone's kind of looking at you, kind of going, are you going to be as good as the last one? But also, he's having to share the screen with the most popular actor to have played the role possibly ever. Apart from the only one in my mind that can come into contention, and maybe not as much for Who fans, but in terms of back in the day, would be Tom Baker. That, like, there is literally no one else in terms of the amount of popularity, and you know, you're going up against that, and he held his own. He completely held his own. Do you know what I mean? And that's also you've got to give kudos to the writing there, because they didn't feel like it's going to be you heavy or him heavy. It just complemented the scene for what it was. But I think he did really well, and like David's Doctor is still knocking about. But I also think like it'll be one of them where it's like it's enough for fans to go, he got a happy ending. He's there. if we want to bring him back, we can. But also, I think it's good now to just let it be for a while. Just let it.
Well,
Do you know what I mean?
why not
in
bring
terms,
him back? Why
no,
not
I'm
bring him
not.
back in a limited series, like a like an event series thing? You know, that's like
Yeah,
4 episodes. Like, why not? Like, I think it's.
Oh yeah,
You've
no,
got-
no. I'm not saying don't ever bring him back. I'm just saying like maybe just give it a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Like give it that time to be special. Because the only reason I say is we've seen this before, right? And I know it's different, but it's like think of the Daleks, right? Done to death. Like, and that's the problem, is that people don't fear them anymore, or that people don't go crazy about them anymore, because every time they come on screen, we know they're going to be defeated. In fact, I think the best.
Sorry, Jerome. Sorry, Sinead's unwell. I've just got to go check on her. Sorry, 1 second. I'll be right back.
That's fine. I'm going to hold
I'm
my
so
own.
sorry.
I'm going to hold
Just
the fort.
talk to the podcasters.
I will. I'll talk to the podcasters. And so what I'm going to say at this point is Michael Priestley is one of the worst people I've ever worked with. He once did this performance in Britopia where he played this Spanish doctor. Really funny, actually, because his character was called the Doctor. You'd think that he'd have been inspired by almost 60 years of Doctor Who and kind of theatrical style and play to create something truly incredible, insane, slightly unique. And he ended up just putting on a really racist accent, putting on a really silly hat. But, you know, give and take, that's what you get. He's still not back at this point. So what else can we say? Well, let's talk a little bit further about the Valiard, because I feel like the Valiard deserves dialogue time in any capacity. It's one of the best ideas, I think. And let's be honest, it probably was the Dream Lord. I think that was Stephen Moffat's way of inching it in. But also, I haven't said this to Mike, the Valiard, technically I've already won this argument, because the Valiard's technically been in Doctor Who every single time the Doctor has shown their dark side, because that's what the Valiard is. It's a manifestation of the darkness within the Doctor. So I'm looking specifically at the Dream Lord. I'm looking at Time Lord Victorious, both for the 10th Doctor and the 12th Doctor. I'm looking at the times like the 11th Doctor and Matt Smith blew up an entire cyber legion just to go and get Amy's baby back. I'm looking at all these things where it's difficult. The Burgundy Maestro has returned. I'm very much looking. I just said the Burgundy Maestro has returned, and I'm very, very much looking forward to you reviewing that footage when you go into the edit.
Nah. Have you got us cancelled?
We how many episodes did we do in total? 12. They're going to be 12 beauties, man. They'll go down in our memory. I think, is Sinead all right? That's my first question. Just in general.
She's just come down with a bug, so.
Did she not cook you dinner?
She's come down with a bug. She's not feeling well at all. But it's a good opportunity. Actually, we should probably wrap this up. So, God knows what you've said in the past 10 minutes, but 10 minutes, that's an over exaggeration. A couple of minutes, but I imagine it was really offensive, and now we won't be able to carry on with the podcast anymore.
It's sad, but I've said some offensive stuff. You've said some offensive stuff, but Dan wasn't even here to say anything. So truly, we know who the real.
Yes, some things I just want to put on record before we leave for this. Maybe we should do a wider Giggle special, because Dan will want to get his thoughts in on this as well.
Classic Dan.
I think Neil Patrick Harris was the MVP. I think he absolutely nailed it. I think that whole dance, I thought it was amazing. I thought the way that his accent, from the moment he was introduced, I was like, this is amazing. Like, what a Doctor Who villain. Catherine Tate performed to all expectations. I thought absolutely phenomenal. And I thought that the way that they closed it off with David Tennant's 14th Doctor was very, very, very good.
Just a very quick question. Do you think Neil Patrick Harris will come back?
Yes.
Yeah, you do. I think he will. I think it's one of those performances that was so strong. It's like, I think that, we'll see him again.
Doctor Who's about to be a global behemoth. It's with this, I think it will attract people of that caliber 100%. So I think he'll be back. Yeah, I think he'll be back.
Do you know who apparently got turned down from not turned down? Do you know Russel T Davies advised someone not to take up a Doctor Who job? I don't know when this was. This might have been prior to 2005 potentially, but it came out today. Apparently, Helena Bonham Carter was going to take a role, and RTD advised her not to. But I haven't read into why exactly that is. But that might be something interesting to discuss in the next one, because that's definitely the sort of person I could imagine in Doctor Who. Just, you know what I mean? Especially like, what's her name? One of my favorite episodes is The Doctor's Wife. I genuinely, Neil Gaiman, I absolutely love that episode. And Suzanne, oh, what's her name? From used to be in Corrie and does a lot of like the ITV dramas now. She ended up playing that role, but that's definitely the sort of role I could have seen Helena Bonham Carter doing 100%.
Yeah, she'd be excellent. Right, let's wrap it up. Sorry, I've only got 3% power left on my laptop as well, so
that's all right. Just remember to end the recording on this one, yeah.
Yeah, all right. I'll see you next time.
See you next time, nerd.